welcome to the very first Music Minds podcast. My name is Tony Fennell, and here with me is my co-host, John Stone. How you doing, John?
All right, doing good, Tony. How are you?
Very good, mate. Excellent. Well, let me explain to our listening audience why we're here and why we'd love them to listen, comment, or even take part. And as our website explains, which is, by the way, musicmindspodcast.com, shameless plug, our show is a weekly podcast where two music industry lifers talk shop about producing, performing, publishing, selling, and living music. What do you say, John? Is that on the money?
Yeah, sometimes you do a little more living than publishing and making money from it, but yeah, that is pretty accurate.
All right, well, let's do a quick roundup of our credentials so our listening audience gets an idea of who we are. As for me, Tony Fennell, I've been a producer, writer, musician for about 150 years now, or maybe 35. I was lucky enough to replace Midge Ure as lead singer for the band Ultravox, which, by the way, was a huge honor for me. I have platinum album certification. I served as a writer and producer for television, including Disney's Bear in the Big Blue House and Viacom's Out of the Box, plus a host of other television shows. I've also toured consistently around the globe, and as recent as 2019, I toured the US and Europe on a Live Nations tour. Hey. Over to you, Mr. Stone.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to compete with that, but I'll do my best. I also did some writing and producing and performing way back in the old days of the 1990s, before the internets and all that stuff took over, and never really got it to work. So I said, how do you make money in this business? And was lucky enough to find a place where I could get started on the publishing side, and have been working at that since about 93. And today, I am in my 20th year at my current job, which is an old jazz pop catalog that owns a lot of big and famous songs from the 1900s, the 20th century. And I do their synchronization licensing, which is if somebody wants to use one of our songs in a film or a TV show or a commercial, video game, that sort of thing, I negotiate the deals and put those together. I also, on the flip side, do some music supervision, which is working with independent filmmakers to find music and clear the rights to use music in their films. That's always very interesting because you get to sort of deal with the creative side more, and you also then have to negotiate with people like me, which is never easy to do. So, but it's always something new, very exciting, and I'm very happy to be working with you, Tony, on this project to bring some of this experience and whatever little bits that I know out there, so that people can maybe get a little better idea of how this business really works.
Well, we're going to be tapping you for as much information as possible, John. That's the bottom line, mate.
All right.
All right, well, let's get into the business of today's show. This one should be right up your alley, John. Taylor Swift versus the Big Machine.
No, boy.
Or, put another way, getting shafted by the business of music. This is an ongoing story, obviously, but let me set this up quickly. On Sunday, June 30th, 2019, the Big Machine label group announced that it had been acquired by manager to the stars, Scooter Braun, and his company, Ithaca Holdings. Now, Braun currently works with the heavyweights Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande, but in the past he's worked with Kanye West and, of course, Taylor Swift. Now, this is where it gets sticky. Taylor Swift's master recordings of her past 6 albums were all owned by the Big Machine and are now owned by Scooter Braun. The upshot is Swift is pissed. John?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's what I would call a very modern feud. You've got big personalities, you've got music, you've got social media involved. It's this whole storyline that just is constantly unfolding in the press and in the social media world, and I think will continue to do so for a while. Taylor had her first deal with Big Machine, as you'll certainly attest, Tony. It was a standard deal, I would say. Not very good for the artist in that case, but a 6-album deal. She put those 6 albums out, and as happens once in a great blue moon, she put out 6 massive albums of hits, made a lot of money for the company, and Scott Borchetta, who is the guy who controls Big Machine, he was very happy about that. I can tell you exactly how happy, because her catalog alone represents 48% of Big Machine's global revenue. Now,
You got to be kidding me.
One artist, 6 albums, and that is basically half of your company and half of your musical output and the product that you control. So clearly Scott didn't want to see her going anywhere, but she came to the end of her agreement and she decided to move on to greener climes, which I believe is Universal Music, and I'm sure they've given her as sweetheart a deal as you possibly can ask for. But Scott wants to retain what he has, and she's saying, and I think the crux of this whole thing is that she's saying she had gone to him and said, once she'd, made her hits and everything, she said, listen, I want to buy my masters back. He didn't want to give them to her. He certainly didn't want to just have her take her, ball and go home. So he offered her what's kind of a crappy deal, which is every one of your old albums that you want, you have to give me a new one, which would have kept her in place for a while. That helped to keep his catalog very valuable. And she didn't like that. She didn't want to do it. They reached an impasse, and she said, all right, well, fine, I'm going home. I'm going to go to my new company and get my new deal. And he turned around and sold it to Scooter Braun. There was a whole social media kerfuffle there with Kanye West when he went up on stage and interrupted her acceptance speech, and then he put out one of his ridiculous songs talking about wanting to have sex with her and laying there with some mannequin, and there was this whole back and forth. So it's really tying all of these things together, and right now she's very upset that he's going to be involved and basically have domain over her old records, which, as she said, so many of those songs she wrote on her bedroom floor, and she paid for the videos out of her own touring income and that sort of thing. So she has a very personal stake in those recordings, but at the end of the day, business is business, and they're doing what they're going to do. So she's come out now very publicly, which I think is really the only approach she has, using keywords that are very big these days, which are things like bully and such, talking about,
In fact, John, if I could actually say, this is what she wrote on social media the same day the deal went down. This is my worst case scenario. And adding that Braun was an incessant, manipulative bully. Oof. This same guy now owns all of the masters. That's got circus written all over it, John.
Yes, and the few things here, though, that certainly work in her favor. These are all old recordings. For the most part, the people that have bought those records have already bought those records, so she will always have a new audience coming in and people who are curious about her past career and stuff. But younger audience, new people coming up and going, oh, Taylor Swift, they're going to be interested in what's current. So it's holding on to those. Also, the master is one thing. You also have the publishing, which she still owns. So just to use an example, or sort of put this in another context, being the songwriter, when you write a song, that's like owning a piece of land. And when you make a recording of that song, it's like building a house on that piece of land. Now, you can have that recording. You can have other people make recordings, and then they have to pay what's called a mechanical license. They get a mechanical license, pay mechanical royalties for that to make a re-recording of that. That's like building other houses on that land. But you still own the land. So Taylor owns the songs that are the underlying copyright, as we call it, of all those old records and recordings. In this business, you make money 3 ways. You make money from performance, which is all, going out on tour, et cetera. But also there are these societies called like ASCAP and BMI and CSAC here in the United States, and they collect money from any time that your music is performed publicly. So you get money from that goes to the publisher. You get mechanical, which is if somebody makes a record or you sell records and distribute and of your songs, you get a royalty for that. And then there's sync, and that's what I do. And sync is the only part of those 3 pieces of the pie, so to speak, that you make a lot of, that you directly control what money you make from it. The other piece of that is that you control whether anybody's going to do anything with that song in sync. You have the right, which we know Miss Swift definitely has, to say no to somebody wanting to use a song in a film or a TV show or a commercial or anything like that. So they may own the house, but they don't own the land. And at the end of the day, if she she decides, and we've already seen this now, I believe Kelly Clarkson came out and said, well, she should just re-record all those songs. She actually does have the right to do that. So she could really screw this deal for them. And I'm wondering if they're really kind of sweating bullets over there, because her being so publicly against this and coming out and really painting, both Borchetta, who she's saying was very callous and kind of didn't do the right thing by her, or definitely didn't do the right thing by her, in her opinion, and Braun calling him a bully and such, it really can, I don't want to say poison this deal, but it can really suddenly devalue this catalog when you're talking about 50% of it being her music that they're trying to move. So it's interesting, yeah.
Hasn't she already gone on record at gigs?
Maybe not overtly and directly calling out people by name, but she's definitely using coded language, shall we say? And she's infamous in some ways, or famous in some ways, of calling out exes, and you could sort of say these guys are her exes now too. In her songs. So who knows what the next lot of songs are going to be coming out talking about people that manipulate and lie and cheat and steal and all that sort of thing, but. Really, at the end of the day, she can control this deal much actually better than they can, because if she makes it very clear that she is not going to be in any way, shape, or form cooperative, supportive, or anything like that of using these songs, if she's going to actively go out and maybe do re-recordings, and we talked about this, Tony, a little while ago when this first came out, and said, yeah, she could do that, but honestly, you don't need to re-record all those 6 albums again. There are hits on each one, maybe 3-4 songs on each one were big hits. She could do a whole new album. She's now getting people lining up on her side, just like Scooter is getting people lining up on his side, trying to, make it sound like he's not such a bad guy. She's getting people coming out. And her main point of saying this is what's wrong with the music industry, that artists are not in control of their own output, that other people who really have nothing to do with the creative process can now have, incredible say in what goes on with these artists' music. And, and sometimes directly against the artist's wishes. That's a fundamental problem in this business. And I think anybody can agree with that.
Without a doubt, mate. I mean, listen, as we both know, and maybe some of the listening audience as well, none of this is new. I mean, what about the Beatles catalogue?
Yeah.
The irony of that. I mean, you know the story, John. McCartney reportedly explained to Michael Jackson just how lucrative publishing rights would be, and bingo! Yeah. Jackson snapped up the Beatles catalogue for a paltry $47.5 million.
Amazing.
Oh, my God. I'd sell my kids for that.
Well, now, Tony.
Maybe not. Listen, but I mean, let's not weep for Paul McCartney. He was no mug at the time either. He'd already begun to acquire rights to other people's catalogs, including Buddy Holly's, and he actually explained to Jackson, I remember at the time, the advantage of owning the rights to music already beloved by the public. Yeah. I mean, again, McCartney, he got shafted royally. I mean, he was trying to do the right thing by Jackson, but the whole reversion thing, John. I mean, am I right in assuming that McCartney now has his catalog back?
Yes, I believe he was able to take his catalog back. Part of that comes from reversion, which is you can have a copyright and control a copyright for a period of time. At the end of that period, it reverts to the original copyright owner. And as we know, the writer, the original creator of the music is always the original copyright owner. They assign those rights to a publisher or someone who represents their catalog. That's a part of the whole publishing business. And what you just talked about, Tony, that was for publishing. So that was actually for underlying copyright, which is the essence. Now, if Taylor somehow had given up the rights to her publishing, which you never do, people, never give up your publishing. Hold on to that like for dear life. If she had given that up, then she really would be up a river without a paddle, because you would not have any control over what you're doing. Now, one piece of that, and you remember when that happened, I remember this, you had never seen Beatles songs used in commercials, anything of the sort. All of a sudden, what was the first thing that popped up? That Nike ad using Revolution, remember?
That's right. That is right.
Now, Sir Paul, I have to assume this. I certainly don't have inside knowledge or anything of the sort, but I have to assume that Paul and John, or since he had already passed by that point, Yoko or whoever was representing his estate, had to have approval rights. Now, what happens in publishing is the original writer can have final say over whether something can be used or not. So and that's something you have to have negotiated into your deal. I would have to think Sir Paul and John Lennon's estate would have been able to have a final say of, yes, we will allow this, no, we will not allow that. That is always in relation to synchronization. For mechanical and performance and those sorts of things, you can't tell somebody they can't record your song as long as they pay for the mechanical rights, unless they do a re-recording with new lyrics or something, some variation on it. But Sir Paul would have had some say over that. So you can bet there was a huge pile of money that changed hands to make that Nike ad when it came out. This, helped a little bit in licking his wounds.
Yeah, there's an interesting story that goes along with that, John. I don't know, I'm sure you know the story, and tell me if this is urban myth or not, but there was the phone call that Mick Jagger got in the limo on his way to a gig from Bill Gates' guys saying, we want to use Start Me Up. So he just threw a number and went, oh, I don't care. Tell him $1 million. The phone went, it's $1 million. The phone came back, oh, it's done. I mean, it's just, and again, you weren't seeing the Stones all over adverts throughout the world. I mean, they basically, there was just, you never heard Rolling Stone songs on adverts, and all of a sudden Start Me Up came for the new Microsoft launch, and away you go. There is money. You're printing your own cash if you've got a popular song that gets used in adverts or films. And John, we will be touching on those over the next couple of weeks during our podcast, because I know that's your area of expertise, and there's a lot of questions that I just don't know. I mean, I think I know something about publishing, and then I start talking to you and I go, what is this black magic voodoo this guy is talking? I have got no clue. The one thing I do know, actually, is that songs, I just looked it up, songs revert back to their original author after 56 years.
Yes.
So, saying that, this week, I think it was this week, Space Oddity turned 50. So that's only got 6 years before that reverts.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a ton of other big songs on the horizon when it comes to that right now. I'm going to touch on another bit of a controversy here, and actually he had a song called Controversy. Prince, didn't he have a big old battle with Warner Brothers about his catalogue and his ownership rights? What went down there, my friend?
Well, it was similar. He was very disappointed with the way things were going with Warner, and when you have people like Prince, or you have people like Sir Paul, or you have people like Taylor Swift, the audience is going to side with them almost automatically. And you have to be very careful when you're dealing with their rights or anything related to them, because you don't want them to turn on you, because what do you have to fall back on? Yeah, you may still own the rights, but they have a lot of power, both literal power and sort of metaphysical power, to do things that, could put you in a compromised position, meaning you're not going to be able to do a lot of the things you wanted to do. Prince also probably had clearance rights and approval rights for anything that was being done for sync for him. So there's a lot of leverage that an artist and a writer can use to make sure that things are being done in their best interest.
Well, that is the truth. But I mean, I know I'll pose this to you, and this is why this show aims to give back to up and coming musicians and musicians that are established and just don't quite know the rules, like me. How on earth am I going to win, or a new artist going to win, any kind of battle with a publisher or a record company when you've got Prince having to write "slave" on his beard? You got Paul McCartney getting stiffed overnight by quote unquote one of his best friends. You've got Taylor Swift having the rug pulled from underneath her. If these guys are fighting for their lives, how on earth is the little guy going to win?
Well, today there's some good things going on today, and other things that aren't so good. You've got artists can just pop up overnight, and we're going to have a chat about this in one of our upcoming podcasts about social media, the power of social media. You can, suddenly break out very quickly without a lot of help. You have to be very diligent. You have to, be committed to it and stuff, but you can make yourself into something. People can find you. Music supervisors for television shows and commercials and stuff can find obscure music. A lot of them love being the one that sort of breaks a new artist. And once you have that kind of leverage, don't just sell out to the first, pretty face that comes along and whispers sweet nothings in your ear, because that's going to wind up being what you get, nothing. The deals that are in this industry, and we'll talk about this too. The way technology has moved forward at light speed, the industry is still limping along, trying to catch up. There's not a lot of innovation. Everybody does things the way that have worked in the past, and you have to take control as much as you possibly can of your own work, your own creative output. And the fact that you have social media, the fact that you have the internet, you have the opportunities that are out there now to get yourself out without the help of a record label or a publisher or that sort of thing. These deals have to start to become more beneficial toward the writer and the artist, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that matter. Their creative output is what drives this industry. So know your power. Know what you have to work with, what you have to offer, and what you're bringing to the table is something no publisher and no record label can do by themselves. Only you can do that.
So, John, you don't like the 360 deal then?
Oh, God, no. I mean, I know that's a popular thing. But again, I mean, that harkens back to Hollywood in the 1930s and 40s when actors were basically employed by a studio and they had to make 15 films a year, and they kept them hopped up on dope, to keep them happy and sort of stoned to the point where they didn't know what was going on, and took most of their money, putting them in a nice house. But at the end of the day, they weren't in control of their careers. So a 360 deal, I would never sign that unless they are giving you such a big pile of gold. You'll lose consciousness trying to climb to the top of it. So it's you have to retain your rights. And one thing, I cannot say this enough: do not ever give up your publishing until it is absolutely to your benefit, and never give up your writer's share. We'll talk about that down the road. If you want to sign a deal with a publishing company, a lot of them are very happy to just administrate your catalog now and allow you to retain your publishing. Those are deals that can come along if you have the right mindset and the right understanding and a good attorney, which you always must have whenever you're dealing with people like publishers and labels. But you always want to control as much of your rights as possible, because yes, Taylor Swift signed a deal that you would expect somebody who's a 15-year-old girl. Her father actually signed it, I'm sure, on her behalf, because she couldn't legally. You have old deals that were made with Paul McCartney and such way, way, way back when you didn't contemplate the way things are done these days. And you had people like Prince, who had been working and doing a lot of great work, and seeing that their label was not being supportive of them, and they wanted to change the terms of that deal, and we're basically been told no. So you have to take control of your art and know whatever deal you're getting into. You have to be the one to do due diligence, to keep track of everything that's going on. When you're getting a royalty statement and you don't like something, you got to challenge them on it. You got to find a way to say, this is what I want, and you have to give it to me, and you have to stay with this program. If we're going to make a deal, terms of this deal must be honored by you as my representative for my recordings or for my publishing, and make sure that they're going to deliver, because so many, and it's not, I'm not shooting down the industry. The industry is there to make you money and to get your product out to market and to get your songs heard. But you have to make sure that it's a true partnership where you're treated like an equal and not just like some chattel that they can do with whatever they want.
Well, we've had this discussion, you and I, many times. The music business is 99% business, 1% music. Unfortunately, if you don't know your business, you're screwed. It is just the way it is. And again, I'm hopeful over the next couple of months we can create some insight. And again, I want the listening audience to know, if we don't know the answer to a question, we're pretty sure that we're going to have guests on that will be able to fill in the gaps for us. I mean, there's a lot of language out there that people just don't understand, me included. John, I'm learning every day, mate. And as I say,
me too.
The publishing side, it really is. It's like the black arts. It makes no sense to a lot of people. And the mailbox money that you get, you go, whoo-hoo, there's my check for X. Right. If you are really on top of it, there's a real possibility you can double and triple that cash with somebody who knows what they're doing.
Sure. And the way the industry is moving, and you now have deals that are outside. I mean, I was just looking yesterday at one of the rap artists. He's got a whole clothing line. You have all these artists now are putting out other products. They're using their fame. They're using the power that has been derived from their writing and their art to venture off into other ways of making money because they understand the value of that. So there's always, I'm not saying, you're sitting there in your bedroom recording on your little Pro Tools rig on your laptop, and you should be going out and saying, okay, Microsoft, let's make a deal, but ultimately down the road, co-branding and development, and there's a whole market out there right now of bringing in artists to give validity to brands and artists and that sort of thing. That's a new frontier, certainly not the new frontier, but a new way of integrating, artists writing music for brands, artists bringing in all kinds of new audiences and such for products and that sort of thing. I mean, they do it on Instagram and doing sponsorships and I love this, milkshake or whatever, health milkshake and such. So sure, why shouldn't artists get into that?
Well, again, it's a license to print cash if you get it right. I mean,
right.
We've got a lot to cover over the next couple of months, and we hopefully this is a nice insight as to where this show is going to go. John, I want to thank you for spending time with me today, mate, because I know you've got a busy schedule, and you're a serious superstar for doing it. But I want to thank the audience for listening and spending some time with us. You can find all of our episodes and how to reach us at our website, musicmindspodcast.com. And please, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time, people, and thanks again, John.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, everybody.